It's July 27th, 2023. Still in this monetary system, which I'm watching some of the FCC, what they're coming out with. I was busy watching this piece on Expedition Unknown about Argentina, um, and whatever that pattern is on the flag. Um, Having crossover as a secondary underneath the United States of America flag that I saw on a flagpole around the area. And then as I'm watching the piece, I've watched Josh go all around the world. He's the host. I then saw their commercial that they had aired about Sleep Number bed, and I was just like, And then it reminded me of what I saw this morning with Khan in the chair at the FTC, which again, when I cross-referenced it, I've heard Disney came out with a movie called Jungle Book, where they use Shere Khan as the tiger. And when I cross-reference the four-letter patterned word of KHAN, according to the Turco-Mongols, for the Google reference, they mentioned that they use the name Khan as a ruler or a chief. And I'm like, now, my presidential palace for federal level looks like this. I look the way that I look. I'm still in New York, Red Cross, and yet they're allowing at a federal level this con in the chair at FTC, which is the Federal Trade Commission. That, just signaling wise, is of great concern, because they have, in this territory of the United States of America, they have a separation of church and state, where I thought tribal and feudal was to stay at state level. Don't know why it's crept into trade level, but again, I'm not quite sure what's going on in its entirety. I myself have been kept in a series of rooms, unable to even get to like social climactic anything. I speak of it like if I was Barbie and I'm in dreamland and there's a Ken, I'm missing my Ken for my entire, again, I'm RH sensitive. So they've done something with the transport or the ability of RH sensitive women to find RH correct counterparts in like a 78. So I'm not quite sure why that is. Again, I bear the symbols 8, 3, and a 78, all on the same star system.
You're making the most of every hour of your life, except the hours that you're sleeping. So why do we leave so much untapped potential on the table? This is a next level bed for a next level you. My circadian rhythm is kicking your circadian rhythm. What?
It's not a competition.
I know. But I'm still winning.
So it is a competition.
Save up to $500 on the new Sleep Number smart bed, plus 60-month financing on most smart beds. Shop now, only at Sleep Number.
So now they use this symbolic bed with the two of them in it. And then when I go to see the BS this morning, more visual construct that they're sending at me. And then they had a shark reference. And again, Jaws came out. I heard the boat reference. It's the orca, right? But there's another reference on there within the USA territory. And then they came out with these angles looking down Broadway. And they had Jacob. I met a Jacobson when I was at Chase on camera. He had that King Charles dog. And then there was, but I was wearing my Chase uniform with my Italian boots. So here we are at the lobby. And then there was this, the Sharks Broken, and they have mentioned there, not only poignant for the ignorant, but the Quirk. And I'm like, well, that's interesting now that they're speaking of CERN, at Higgs particle in theories that they openly discuss and allow such depth of or fathom of conversation, knowing how the dark universe works along with the light feature, that the mortal realm or the humans survive in. So I thought that that was interesting since that goes by just Captain Skipper. Then there's the boson at Higgs particle and the Quirk. I mean, it's charming, really. Like, only if you know that level of linguistics. So now CBS E149 came out with this. This is Boston. They used an example of a N for the letter soup, NBA. So National Basketball Association. They chose a Celtic, which used to be Celtic and look like myself, looked presidential palace approved. This is what all the basketball players used to look like when the sport was original. I think also somebody mentioned that it was originally an Italian sport. Anyhow, nowadays, it no longer looks progressive or Italian from the island of the boot. It now looks like some, for lack of a better term, Biafra state push from somewhere in Africa. I don't know. To be certain, I can't quite tell where the unidentified foreign countries and objectives are from, but I'm watching, and he's really promoting this fact that he made $304 million, same kind that I just referenced, where that's three numbers in digits, and then that is 6 zeros and 3 digits. Where when I worked at Chase on camera and Jacobson came to visit me, I was only making 2 digits and 3 zeros annually. There's a big difference. This man is making 6 zeros more and a digit more than I was able to within this system at the same time that the humans or the management system, if I'm in Barbie's house, in Barbie's dreamland, and I require a Ken at RH Sensitive, while they've kept Ken away from me, they've also limited my ability to even gain access to dollars in the dollhouse. So here we are at watching what is doing extremely well in the dollhouse at sports level. The sport of basketball no longer looks anything like when I first arrived, or even in my parents' day and age, before they had big national brands and big sports like the conglomerates. Like, what have they done with all of my life while they're holding me in some 3-0 system, and they're offering this 6 zeros and an extra digit?
Two-time NBA All-Star Jaylen Brown made history this week. The 26-year-old Boston Celtics player signed the biggest contract in NBA history yesterday, almost $304 million over 5 years. Jaylen is a...
First of all, for name, image, and likeness, he's wearing Celtics, but he doesn't look Celtic. If I just have to point out the obvious, especially considering this is the presidential palace, expectation at federation and federal.
Also very well known for his work off the court. He's led anti-discrimination protests, spoken about the importance of education and technology at MIT, Harvard, and Berkeley. In 2019, he founded the Juice Foundation, which gives young people access to education resources they may not have had.
And what seems really upsetting is that in my life frame, I've been harmed. I've been almost shut into rooms, and inability in order to get to social levels, like through church, through anything, pretty much hiding away with my children. And this free speech has really just caught on, and activism has caught on. And again, I know presidential palace policing a number one important. So I don't know who's working the field and why this is allowed to go on, and why the attacks on my personal and social life were so severe, while this is growing right in front of the palace police for the president and all the lands that the Federation covers in this territory known as the United States of America.
Otherwise. And Jaylen Brown joins us now from Boston. Jaylen, good morning. Congratulations to you. I want to start with where you started yesterday in signing your deal. You right away said the first thing you thought of when you signed this record-setting contract was giving back to the community. Why is that so important to you to make sure that you are giving back?
Not only is he winning, but he is winning at such a gross, exponential, numerical value that I'm not surprised the blockbuster double feature this weekend, let's just be honest, was Barbie and Oppenheimer on the same day, on the same weekend.
Well, I think that being an athlete, you have a lot of influence in your community, and if you use it responsibly, I think you can make the world a better place.
I know that's something that your mother has instilled in you from just reading. Your mom said no matter how well you play the game, basketball's what you do. It's not who you are. Who you are is measured by the mark you leave on the world. What is the mark that you want to leave there in Boston?
Just that work needs to be done.
I should also mention, I have 4 clocks at the moment, still no Ken, but 4 clocks. And all 4 clocks are not receiving monetary compensation to match what this gentleman is receiving, just at a state level. I mean, federal is a whole nother thing, but not at a federal level, not at a state level. So again, it's worth mentioning.
I think society needs to continue to be improved. I think communities need people to represent them. They feel excluded. Me being from those communities, just because I escaped the barriers that allowed me to make it to the NBA, doesn't mean I'm gonna forget about the groups of people where I came from. So I'm just trying to help as much as I possibly can, and just ultimately, make the world a better place.
You talked really specifically yesterday about what you want to do now there in Boston, and you were there with kids that are benefiting from your Juice Foundation. They're part of the Bridge program, which I know works with STEM education. First of all, why did you want to do that news conference there in front of them?
I think, education is one of the most powerful devices that we have, and it's one of the ways that, our social mobility is being controlled at a very early age. So being able to have my students there who are participating in my MIT program, to get to learn directly from MIT professors, MIT scientists, NASA astronauts, you get to directly benefit from those stories and those life lessons. So my goal is to build the next leaders, the next generational leaders of the world, and I feel like with the Bridge program, that's what I'm doing.
So now he had access to NASA astronauts and MIT specialists, but I have not, neither have my children. Inside this, And at this particular time, they have also on the television an announcement that there's something called a CQ Brown inside of this U.S. Air Force. It's no longer Dave. I'm just noticing a whole lot of chairs that have been like musical chairs, and it's a growing concern. Now here, this is Washington, D.C., and this is earlier. So that's someone in the sports arena that's functioning within the territory of the United States of America, for which that monetary system is. And then I'm going to go to this conversation from the FTC chair, who has herself labeled as Con, which is a concerning four-letter pattern at that high level, because it's at federation level. It's not at state level, but federation level for Federal Trade Commission.
Welcome back to CBS Mornings.
And that does why, if she's at Federal Trade Commission chair, is she working in the capacity of a U.S. ambassador or embassy with an EM, not an AM? Because even those two letters get very confusing with the enormity for which has grown, like in some exponential. Again, I don't have access to CERN myself, or CERN's reports for doing the calculations. I mean, I have my own calculus for which I'm taking samples of the things that they're showing me in some sequenced pattern in some astronomical event, but
the Biden administration is signaling an aggressive new approach to corporate mergers under guidelines out this month. One of their biggest targets, massive tech companies allegedly looking to gobble up the competition. Lina Khan, the 34-year-old chair of the Federal Trade Commission, is leading the charge. Khan has taken on Amazon, Microsoft, and Meta. She argues bigger isn't always better for the little guy. First, on CBS Mornings, we spoke with Khan about what she says is the end of decades of retreat by government from its role ensuring fair competition.
Now, I sampled a piece of this earlier. I'm not going to go back through it again, but what I am going to fast forward to is this playbill about the movie Jaws, which is now on Broadway. They brought it back, which they also, on the outside marquee, they have the word quirk and poignant, which seem to be really two very key words for The Shark is Broken. Now, same episode, as I fast forward, it says Alien Endeavor. Again, I mean, vertical pilots seem to have many, variations.
But unverified claims that the military has been hiding evidence of alien spacecraft from the American people. Scott McFarlane was there and joins us from the U.S. Capitol. Scott, good morning.
Dana, good morning. It was a very rare sight here. Members of the media from across the world inside a U.S. House subcommittee hearing room. A room that doesn't usually get this kind of attention, but the claims made inside were certainly creating a buzz. Just like at the movies, turns out there's a line out the door when Congress talks about UFOs, also known as unidentified aerial phenomena as well.
Do you believe UAPs pose a potential threat to our national security?
Yes, and here's why. The technology that we faced was far superior than anything that we had.
A U.S. House subcommittee called 3 military veterans to talk about their close encounters.
I know the exact locations.
Former military intelligence officer David Grush testified he suspects the Pentagon is covering up a decades-long program to retrieve crashed objects.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
The Pentagon has denied Grush's claims. And then there was the uncorroborated testimony the U.S. is in possession of alien material from crashed UAPs.
Biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
Two former pilots also detailed their own experiences with mysteries in the sky.
This object was estimated to be almost the size of a football field.
It was perfectly white, smooth, no windows.
Congress, which for decades has avoided the topic of UFOs, signaled it's considering new requirements for federal agencies and the Pentagon to open their books on the more than 360 UFO reports made since early 2021.
And I want to trust that the American people will be able to weigh the evidence and make up their own minds.
This is becoming a uniquely bipartisan issue. The Senate this week takes up legislation that would require the National Archives to regularly release federal reports about UFOs. Arguing, Nancy, those mysterious items in the sky are a danger, if nothing else, to military pilots.
Now here's the mention of this. You're going to need a bigger boat.
Come back, Nancy, you were mentioning that in that moment, that goal, that it all happened so fast. That's what's so wonderful. The game kind of goes along like this, and then there's just a spike of
Sure,
action.
it's a little bit of a scuffle, a little bit of anger, and then boom, there's a goal. So it all works out, but there's a huge rush of adrenaline, I think, that really propelled her to get that goal, which we needed.
And we will propel you into our second hour with our very own nod to Shark Week and a behind-the-scenes look at the movie that started our cultural obsession with the feared sea creature. It's been 48 years since Jaws captivated and terrified audiences, becoming the original summer blockbuster. First, on CBS Mornings, Anthony Mason tells us about a new Broadway play that reveals the on-set drama that plagued the movie's production. Anthony, good morning.
Good morning. The story behind the Great White Shark is coming to the Great White Way. And for the star of The Shark is Broken, the legacy of Jaws is literally in his blood. The first thing you notice at the new Broadway show about the making of the movie Jaws,
this movie survives, perhaps it'll be watched by sharks one day,
is how much Captain Quint in the play looks like Captain Quint in the film. You're really kind of a dead ringer for your dad.
It has been said. What's happening on set?
Ian Shaw plays his real-life father, Robert Shaw, in The Shark is Broken. Is it weird to look in the mirror before you go on?
A little bit, but when I'm like this, but that's more like Quint.
Shaw admits he was petrified of playing the part.
It seemed full of jeopardy.
Yeah.
But other people, wiser people, thought that it was a good idea, so they sort of pushed me over the cliff.
What was the jeopardy as far as you were concerned?
Well, that it could be embarrassing. I mean, I really...
The pun didn't lose me at over the cliff for Cliff Notes.
thought before the very first performance that it was going to be a car crash.
This thing hasn't been edited yet. You may well end up on the cutting room floor.
But the play, which he co-wrote, was a huge hit at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, then again in London, and now comes to the John Golden Theatre on Broadway. And here's the orca.
Here's the orca.
It's actually about the same size as the ship in the film?
I think it is as accurate as humanly possible.
In Steven Spielberg's classic thriller, the orca goes in search of a great white shark, terrorizing beachgoers. Captain Quint, played by Shaw, is joined by oceanographer.
I did not lose the memorabilia at the Barbie movie where Barbie had to break up a beach off because they wanted to beach each other off. So it did not lose its humor on my person while I sat there watching it by myself on opening weekend.
Hooper, played by Richard Dreyfuss.
I think he's come back for his noon feeding.
And Police Chief Martin Brody, played by Roy Scheider. It was the first film to be shot on the open seas.
Now, also does not miss its mark as far as doppelgangers for the shipping company that my uncle worked for and the actor that they chose for this particular movie of Jaws. And there's some other hints that go along with that if you don't know the scenario, it would be hard to catch.
Spielberg wanted to make it look as authentic as possible, but it was a nightmare.
The mechanical shark, nicknamed Bruce, kept breaking down. The weather wouldn't cooperate. As filming went 3 months over schedule, the actors were trapped on the Orca.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
This is a crowded little ship. It gets testy in here.
Now it says on the wall, family first aid kit.
Yes. You feel it, don't you?
Yeah, just right away.
Maybe this is a new kind of movie. Colin Donnell plays Roy Scheider.
Your name is higher, and it's in the middle.
Alex Brightman is Richard Dreyfuss.
What is the dynamic that occurs here? The dynamic is 3 enormous egos, varied egos, in a very tight space.
You know, there is a question I've been meaning to ask you.
And what might that be?
Why do you drink so much?
To cope with smart asses like you, Richard.
No.
Shaw, a hard-drinking, old-school Shakespearean actor, was rubbed the wrong way by the ambitious young upstart, Dreyfuss.
Famously, Robert Shaw would lean into his ear right before they would say action and say, mind your mannerisms. And leaving Dreyfuss sort of to like flounder in the idea of going, what mannerisms?
Scheider was left to play the referee.
Roy ends up being sort of the fulcrum in the middle.
Yeah.
He really does act as sort of a counterpoint to these, dare I say, outsized personalities.
As filming dragged on in the waters off Martha's Vineyard in the summer of 1974, Ian Shaw visited the set. That's 4-year-old Ian inspecting the mechanical shark.
That was exciting.
Yeah.
Yes. Seeing Bruce.
Yeah.
That got my attention.
Years later, Ian Shaw auditioned for Dreyfuss when he was directing a stage production of Hamlet in England.
And went into the interview thinking that Richard would be absolutely delighted to see me because I was going to tell him who I was.
Yes. You saw something in his face?
It looked as if he'd seen a ghost, you know, a bad ghost. So it was very appropriate for Hamlet.
You didn't get the part, by the way.
I didn't get the part, no.
In writing the play, Shaw had to excavate his father's past.
All these years later, you're like some sort of archaeologist.
Did you find anything in looking at him in a way maybe you hadn't before?
Oh, a lot, yeah. Yeah, I found it absolutely fascinating, and I found that there was some grief left, actually.
Really?
Yeah. I found it very moving and therapeutic.
What did you find that you didn't know?
His athletic mind, like he was very honest.
You on the Indianapolis?
What happened?
Robert Shaw, also an accomplished novelist, helped rewrite the famous Indianapolis speech that's a cornerstone of the film.
Sometimes that sharky looks right into you, right into your eyes. You know the thing about a shark, he's got lifeless eyes.
Ian Shaw recreates it in the play.
When he comes at you, he doesn't seem to be living until he bites you.
Most people don't get the opportunity to embody their father.
Yes.
And I'm wondering what that feels like.
I suppose it's a pleasure. It's a strange thing to say.
Yeah.
But the whole thing has made me feel that I've understood him better and that I'm closer to him.
For Ian Shaw, the orca's voice.
Now, this is where it says funny and quirky. At Higgs particle, that quirky and that charm brings on a whole nother context as to solar system, planets, star systems, and the measurement of like gamma radiation fields and all sorts of things that I don't really have the words for because the humans have not necessarily painted it in such crisp, sharp lines of definition, but I've learned enough through my field experience at this exposure level to gather quite a journal.
Voyage to Broadway has led to another unexpected gift. Your mom actually performed in this theater.
She did, yes.
1957, she did Look Back in Anger.
I don't think I want anything more to do with love.
Shaw's mother was the actress Mary Ure. That must have really big meaning.
It does, you know, and the show is so personal. It's an extraordinarily lovely coincidence.
Yeah, and it is a coincidence. You didn't know.
It's a pure coincidence, yeah.
Isn't that amazing? The Shark is Broken opens on August 10th at the John Golden Theater on Broadway. I went to the first preview on Tuesday night. It is so much fun. And as you saw there with Ian Shaw, you know, he lost his mother when he was 5. He lost his father when he was 8. So you can imagine how freighted this play is with meaning for him. And he said, I think it's probably the bravest thing I've ever done. He said, although I only came to that bravery because a lot of people pushed me.
Right.
It's August for the month, Augustus. And she's a perfect 10. Yeah, she is a perfect 10. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way universe, galaxy is broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.